Hey, good morning. Welcome to Morning Brew. My name's Scott. I'm one of the elders at Lake Eustis Christian Church, and this is Morning Brew. Hope you got yourself a good coffee today. If not, go ahead and grab one because it's the liquid of life. Well, in my world it is. But anyway, thanks for joining. I read something interesting this week that really made me, I've just been pondering on a lot. And it was actually, I'm not a Facebookie. I don't get on there a ton. I go on there maybe to check some photos my wife's put up or something something like that. But I happened to go on there and I saw this post and it really struck a chord with me. And it just kind of, I've just been pondering it all week. Read it Saturday night, Sunday morning, sometime around there. And it was a story. It was a story about a man who's presumed to be a Christian. He believed in Jesus, but for whatever reason, I'm going to paraphrase some of it, but you're going to get the gist of it. He left the church. And the pastor of the church noticed that this man was not attending anymore. It was winter. It was cold. So this man one night is sitting in his family room, just pondering, maybe reading a book, just taking some time to himself. Hasn't been to church in quite a while. Hasn't been around other brothers and sisters in Christ, and gets a knock at the door. Man answers the door. It's the pastor. And so they go back in the family room, sit down, and the whole time there, the pastor doesn't say a word to him. Just sits there and just hangs out with him. But while he's hanging out with him, he takes a poker, and he goes and he reaches over to the fire and takes one of the coals in the fire, the hot coals that's part of this pile. Wood's burned down. It's got that bright reddish orange glow because it's really hot. Takes it and this one single piece of wood and sets it off to the side. As it sits there, you see the rest of the fire is just raging, just hot. It's burning. And there's one piece of wood, there's one ember is dimming. It's going from hot and it's just starting to dim and it's starting to fade away. The light's almost out and it's almost actually where it just looks cold. And the pastor takes that ember and he puts it back into the fire. And as soon as it touches the fire, it just gets hot and red again. It reignites. And sat there for a few more minutes. Pastor got up and said, it's time for me to go. Man looks at the pastor and said, thank you. Thank you for that message. And where it struck a chord with me is just how important fellowship is in the family of God. How important it is that we don't isolate ourselves and that we don't take ourselves away from that fellowship that's there to encourage us and strengthen us. And even more so, it made me start to think about of how important it is for me to make sure that as it puts me in check to make sure that, wow, not only am I fellowshipping, but that those that aren't there or those that I haven't seen or that I'm re-engaging people and bringing them back into the fire, in a sense, right? I can remember back in my early years when I first got out of the Army, I made a couple bad decisions. I'd just gone through a divorce and it was unacceptable to me. Yes, divorce is unacceptable, but I was beating myself up so bad that I just completely stopped going to church. I felt ashamed of myself because, I never thought in a million years that something would happen to me. And it was so devastating, just emotionally. And I just pulled myself back. I just went to this dark place where I just didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to be around Christians because I felt like I was being judged. And the cool thing about it is there's this core of guys. There's like 2 or 3 guys that just continually, one in particular, his name was John, just continually kept reaching out to me, kept pulling me back in, hey man, let's go out. And then small groups, and then it morphed into little bigger groups. So eventually I was back in the church again. You know, and again, that the story I read in Facebook and just reflecting on that, the importance of fellowship and how much of an importance we need to place fellowship as far as Christians. And that in the church, that's so important that we keep the body connected. You know, I just couldn't imagine what would have happened to me if I just did not have those 2 or 3 men reaching out to me at that point in my life. Where would I be? Would I have gotten back into the church? Would I have reinserted myself into the fire and fed off the encouragement of the body? And who knows, you know? But there's another point that I want to point out here. Another point I want to hit on. Point I want to point out. It's like a double, right? Another thought about fellowship that I want to hit on, and that comes from Romans 15, verse 7. It says, "Therefore welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God." You know, when I was pulled myself away from the church and then got reinserted, it was awesome because, you know, I was being welcomed back in. But do we realize the gravity of what Paul's telling us to do? Welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you. Let's break that down. What was I? Who am I? Well, I was a sinner, and I've been saved by grace. I came with a ton of baggage. I was judgmental, anger, lust, greed, all these things in my life. And Christ accepted me. So Paul is telling us, therefore, welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. So that means next time somebody comes into it's this radical statement, right? It's this radical statement because think about it. Next time somebody comes in, walks through those church doors, or next time you bump into somebody who you know needs Jesus and they aren't like you, or maybe they're radically different than you, that Paul tells us that we're to welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you. Welcome other believers. So God so loved the world. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, doesn't, you know, what gender you are, what political, you know, stature you have, what financial prowess you have, whatever it might be. It's this Christ-like welcome. If we have this Christ-like welcome, the ability of the body to reach others, to glorify God and to minister to others is just beyond the imagination. The amount of lives we could touch. So, first of all, realize how important it is for us to fellowship with one another. That Christians continue to encourage each other and engage each other and don't become reclusive and isolated. And the second thing is, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how different, how radically, how radical somebody might be, just the way they look, the way they act, welcome others as Christ would welcome them. Don't judge. Don't treat them any different. Don't treat them, you know, we had real quick, and I know I've got a couple more minutes left here. A great testimony of this is last Sunday in church, we had a woman walk into the church lobby, and to watch a couple members of the body go over and engage this person who otherwise might have been looked at as kind of unwelcomed anywhere else. Looked like she may have not have a place to stay, looked a little homeless, she was wanting some food. Looked like she hadn't bathed. I mean, is that comfortable? I'll be honest, uncomfortable to me, but yet to watch members of the body to reach out and love and see where this person's need is, that's a Christ-like welcome. So listen, keep your ember in the fire, stay connected, fellowship, but also, like Paul says, welcome one another just as Christ has welcomed you. Right? Let's just be a church. Let's be a family of love, a church of love. I want to thank you for joining me today. Hope you all have had an amazing week. Romans 15, chapter 15, verse 7 in particular. Just read it. Read before that. There's some great words from Paul. And challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to step out of your comfort zone this weekend. Wherever you may attend church, wherever you may go, wherever you shop, wherever, but just challenge yourself to step out of the comfort zone, to welcome somebody into the family that you normally wouldn't engage. So God bless. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week.